Hopefully that's working for people and they can see what is on my screen. Um, Thank you for coming along to this session. I'm going to be talking about some work I've been doing over the last 6 months or so with a client of mine around using AI agents to effectively clone myself and make my role easier. A word of warning before we begin. If you turned up expecting some sort of AI thought leader or AI expert, I'm not that person. I don't really use Claude Code. I'm still very much married to ChatGPT. Other models are available, of course. And for a while, one of my best use cases of using AI was updating a profile picture of mine. I had a call with one of my clients and they said, "Oh, you look nothing like your photo." And this was the photo I was using, which feels a little bit harsh. So I used ChatGPT to update my profile picture to make it more resemble me, combined with the old picture and a selfie. I have a very much love-hate relationship when it comes to working with AI. A trend a number of months ago was asking AI models to create an image of how they've been treated by you, which doesn't reflect me in the most positive light, I think it would be fair to say. Very much getting frustrated when ChatGPT can't do very basic things that I think it should be able to do, given how well it's marketed these days. When it comes to ways of working and what I do, so having a common understanding is really important around terms, technology, roles, because often we may have come across maybe roles in different organizations and think we have a perception as to what that role particularly means, but actually in that specific organizational context, it may be different. So one of the challenges when it comes to improving ways of working is, of course, making sure that it's clear and transparent as to what we mean by a certain term, by a certain role, by a certain bit of language that we use. Another thing as well is when it comes to improving ways of working and defining things and sharing that with people, often it can get lost. People lose track of where they should be looking and they're not sure, is something on Confluence, is it on Jira, is it on SharePoint, is it on something else, is it in a Teams chat, is it in a Teams channel? So one of the challenges when it comes to being a change agent is always about making that information readily accessible to people. So they're not like the poll woman on the screen here, where they're not sure where they need to go to find what it is they want to find. And also, when it comes to improving ways of working, you can often find yourself being the bottleneck. People want a lot of your time. You're the recognized expert, for want of a better phrase, in the organization. So you end up getting invited to lots of meetings. People want your opinion on things, and that's good, but you only have so much capacity. And often people might find themselves having to wait to get feedback from you when actually, if they had something to hand that could give them feedback in the moment, that would make their lives a lot easier. Another thing is when you're using things like data and metrics and introducing this to organizations that maybe aren't familiar with this, is making sure there's a common understanding as to what a particular metric or a number means. You can often lead to instances where people wrongly interpret metrics and people might be suspicious of them. And then actually people might not really know what it is that they should be looking at. So if you're going to be using tools such as AI, for example, you need to be using metrics that are agreed and have a common definition rather than things that could be open to interpretation or even things that your AI model itself could hallucinate. And then another thing when it comes to getting people familiar with new ways of working is training. Inevitably, people will get asked, or in some cases pushed, to attend training around particularly things like product management or particular aspects of product ownership or things like flow metrics, for example. And often people can't wait to get through the training, pretty much flying through it like the graphics shown there, getting through it as quick as they can, which means that it comes to challenges when it comes to putting it into practice in the day to day. And that's what matters. It's less about them attending the training, it's then getting that knowledge and being able to practically apply it in their day to day. And then another thing when it comes to working with AI models and AI tools is the common challenges we find with it around very basic things like gaslighting you into believing that strawberry has two R's rather than three. This is one of my favorite social media accounts at the minute by a chap called Hust, and he consistently trolls ChatGPT and AI with different challenges it poses before him in terms of maybe things that are on his face and it can't recognize it, or getting it to advocate for him for a role and it ends up giving a really bad reference. So yeah, when it comes to using AI, for example, we need to limit the amount of hallucination or things it can create, and we want to be pointing it to the right sources and things where things are defined, particularly in our organizational context. So what does that mean for me? Well, in terms of with my client, what I said about doing was creating effectively a digital clone of myself so that something, an agent, would have the knowledge and capability and the things that I would point people to on demand. And it would be able to simplify their roles across product development and engineering and tech, and speed up their effectiveness in their way of working. So rather than always needing to come to me to get an answer or an opinion, they had something there would have similar thoughts, is trained on similar ideas that could give them fast feedback in the moment, as well as integrate with different tools that the organization uses. A little bit about the organisation, just for context. The organisation we're working in is a company called Psychiatry UK. They are an online mental health service provider. So if you believe that you might be autistic or needed an ADHD assessment, you could get referred by the NHS to do an assessment, or you could pay for a private assessment and then progress into things like treatment and annual and shared care with the NHS, where you view them on a regular basis. So people across product and tech would interact with an agent via two platforms: Microsoft Teams, the everyday tool that we use day to day to talk to people, and Copilot. And so kind of Microsoft's AI tool of choice would be embedded within their machines that they use, physical or virtual. In terms of building the AI agent, for those that are interested, I use a tool called Copilot Studio. That tends to be Microsoft's tool of choice when you're building agents that it points you to. And Copilot Studio uses a bunch of things. It uses knowledge. So these are slide decks, PDFs, documentation, repositories in the organization you specify. So this could be things on SharePoint, it could be things on Confluence. Excuse me, the lights have gone out in the room I'm in. Let's hopefully they come back on. Um, Tools and skills. So these will be things that the agent could go off and do. It could send an email to someone, or it could ping maybe an API that's in use for a tool in the organization and carry out a list of tasks. As agents grow in complexity, the need to maybe create child agents is always there. So one of the things that we did with this agent is building things like a delivery agent, a flow agent, a value agent, so they're focused on specific tasks rather than putting all the instructions for the agent into one big instruction block. So breaking it down so it's a bit simpler of where it knows what to reference. And then finally, topics. So topics are effectively kind of a way to have a structured conversation between a user and an agent. Think of things like if this, then that, or when you're using chatbots on a website, and rather than entering text, you click buttons. It just simplifies the interaction and prevents errors. So if you're passing information from one system to another, it can ensure that it's always formatted in the correct format, for example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you examples of what I think are the best use cases across different roles in the organization, how they would interact with it, and then some of the outcomes in terms of the usage and adoption. So at a very basic level, we can use it from a generative perspective. Maybe someone is new to the organization, they've transitioned into maybe a product owner role for the first time, and they're not sure what does a product owner do. So we can ask our agent, well, what does a product owner do? So what it's going to do is it's going to go off and it's going to return an AI-generated answer based on looking at a certain knowledge base. In this particular instance, it's looking at Confluence. So it returns a definition, purpose, responsibilities, and guidance for the role. And there you can see it's hyperlinked, so it can reference different documentation, but also link off to it if a user wants to read more. So this is good because we're structuring a response that is tailored to our organizational context. It's not a case of the agent is just looking at the Scrum guide and returning the text definition from the Scrum guide. We've got something here that's a bit more tailored for what it is that we do as an organization, what the roles and responsibilities are, that kind of thing. Now, when it comes to being a product owner in the organization, prioritization is very important. Different organizations use different models. So a new PO or new product manager might be asking, well, how does work get prioritized? As part of introducing new ways of working, one of the things we've done is introduce a framework called RICE. If you're familiar with RICE, it's a similar thing. So reach, impact, confidence, and effort. But the B stands for business importance or business impact. So you can bring to the fore more of the importance for the organization. You can talk about things like maybe strategic alignment, that sort of thing. So people have been on training as to how to do BRICE scoring, how to BRICE an idea. It's documented on Confluence in terms of this is what it means. These are some examples. This is what the different criteria is for each price element. And then I might get asked a question, someone's been on the training, they want to put it into practice. So they're trying to price a change for the website, and they're unsure how to rate a particular aspect. In this particular example, it's reach. So rather than, waiting on me to reply to them, they can go off and ask the agent as to how they would score it. So here's one I made earlier. So this is an example of an AI guided journey completion for people that are onboarding for the first time. And we've got our price fields there that are highlighted in terms of the different aspects and how we score them. And a PO might ask it for help in terms of, can it help me price score an idea? So then I'm going to give it the particular epic that it is that we want to prioritize. You've got the reference number here. And what it's going to do is it's going to look at the information within the epic, and it's going to look at how we calculate price scores, and it's going to return a score. So it's going to return a suggestion for each price element, what the overall score is, and what the rationale is behind that. And it's going to offer the user some options as to what they want to do next. They can copy it to Jira, price another item, or change something. It's really important, I think, when you're using AI tools that you don't just take the easy way out, which in this instance would just be copying it to Jira. A paper that Microsoft released not too recently, actually, talked about the impact of generative AI on knowledge workers and their critical thinking skills, and effectively saying that there was self-reported reductions in critical thinking skills around cognitive effort from workers. They're effectively just outsourcing all the critical thinking to AI and getting it to do the critical thinking for them, which isn't really how we should be thinking about AI. We should be thinking about it as a sparring partner for us. So when we have an idea or we're unsure about something, we're able to get a second opinion and we can validate that as well. We're not just outsourcing it and it's giving us the answer and we're just copy and pasting. So your PO might look at this and think, well, I'm not sure I agree with that. So then we're going to ask it to explain our rationale further. It's going to ask, well, what particular rationale do you want to know about? So I'm going to say here around reach and confidence. And then it's going to give me a bit more of an elaborated answer as to how it's come to that particular score for reach and confidence. There's a bit more explanation there. Now, you might read that and think that's fine, or you might read it and think, do you know what, I still think it should be lower. Again, use your critical thinking skills here. So then you can ask the agent in terms of, well, I'd like to change something. And it's going to suggest, well, what is it that you would like to change? And it gives you some examples as to how to phrase it. And I'm just going to simply say, just reduce reach and confidence. I could be more specific here and talk about the specific percentage, but here I'm just going with the next one down. So it's gone from 75 and 70% down to 50%. So now, let's say we're happy with that. We're going to copy it to Jira. And on the left-hand side, you'll see the item in Jira, the price fields. On the right-hand side is me instructing the agent to copy it to Jira. You'll notice there it double checks as to, are you sure you want to proceed? And I'm saying, yes, I want to. It says the updates have been made. And then if I refresh the item, we can see that our different price fields have been populated along with the rationale and the explanation. So without a user needing to go in and navigate via Jira, find the item, update all the fields individually, they could just have a conversation with the agent and do it that way. Another thing that I've been coaching the client on is around focusing on outcomes over outputs. So again, running training around what the difference is between the two, talking about things like leading metrics and lagging metrics and what the difference is between the two of them, trying to emphasize more around identifying leading indicators for ideas rather than just lagging metrics like revenue or profit or cost prevention. And again, that stuff is documented on Confluence, so there's a knowledge point for the agent to refer to, as well as the training content itself. And we have that field in the epic where a user can add that information in. So a PO might think, well, can it help define some measurable outcomes for me? And I'm going to take the same ID for that item. I'm going to ask it, can you define some measurable outcomes for me? It's going to look at the item, the information within it, and it's going to suggest some leading and lagging indicators in terms of how you might track the impact of that particular thing. Now, it's important here that you're specific in terms of it doesn't hallucinate too much as to metrics that may not even be trackable for the organization. You can maybe point it to specific metrics that already exist. I'll share more on that shortly. And again, it's going to ask us, well, what do you want to do next? We can refine it, or we can copy it to Jira, or we can do another item. And I'm going to say, let's copy it to Jira for simplicity's sake. So again, on the right-hand side, I'm instructing it to copy to Jira. On the left-hand side is the measurable outcomes field there. So you can see it's empty currently. And it's going to say, well, can you confirm that you're happy for me to do this? and then it's going to tell me the updates that have been made. And then if I just refresh the item on the left-hand side, you'll see there that the item has been updated. So the leading and lagging indicator has been added to the item. And we've got some of the rationale as to why we track that particular metric. And the final thing around kind of idea refinement is breaking the idea down. So can it break an idea down into user stories? Let's say it's got a good price score and we prioritize it and we think we can track the measurable outcomes. So then we can ask it, well, can you take this idea and break it down into a series of user stories? So again, it's going to line things up. It's going to be looking at things like its reference material for what are good user stories versus not so good user stories, things like invest criteria. And you see it's written some user stories in our format of as a I want to so that, and some acceptance criteria in your classic BDD given when then syntax. So that's great in terms of having a starting point for what the initial stories might be. Of course, that doesn't mean that we don't refine it in collaboration across engineering, product, and tech, but it just speeds up that process in terms of getting something ready for development if needed. And again, it's going to ask us, what do you want to do next? Now, of course, we could refine it, we could iterate on it, but again, for demo purposes, I'm just going to copy it straight into Jira. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the child work items field in the epic there is completely blank. On the right-hand side, I'm just going to click copy to Jira. Again, it's going to ask me to confirm that I'm happy to proceed, and we'll say yes. It's going to line things up. And then what it's going to do is it's going to tell us that it's successfully copied those items under the epic, and that reminds us to check the item. If we refresh it and we scroll down, what we'll see is those items have been created, and we can click into those items and we can see the description and the acceptance criteria. You'll also notice on the right-hand side there, the reporter is the agent itself. So one of the things is anytime the agent makes a change within Jira, it's notified in the audit log and the history that it's the agent that made the change rather than it being a particular user. So we can quickly find if something has been AI generated. That's great from an idea refinement perspective, but what about when we're into delivery and tracking the progress of things? Another thing we can ask it is, well, what are our latest product KPIs? Light's gone out again for me. So I can ask it, well, what are my latest KPIs? And it's going to ask us to confirm what pathway this is for. So this is a patient pathway they can go on. I've chosen private patients specifically here. So it's going to bring me back to the North Star, as well as the metrics that ladder up to the North Star in the KPI tree. So this is real data. It's looking at the last 7 days and 6 weeks. It returns the value and it returns the trend over time. So you can quickly get insights as to what metrics may or may not be moving in the right direction. And it's going to ask as well, would you like me to suggest some items in the backlog you want to consider prioritizing next, given how your KPIs are performing? Because one of the challenges with a PO or a PM, of course, is, well, what should we be doing next? What should we be prioritizing? So I'm going to ask it yes. And what it's going to do now is it's going to look at those metrics. It's going to scan the list of epics in the backlog, look at the detail within those epics and say, okay, well, based on how your metrics are trending, these are the top 3 things that I think you should consider next. It links to the item and it can tell you what it's about and also what metrics it may positively impact. So again, it shouldn't make the decision for the PO, but if the PO's prioritize 3 different things and none of them are these, it might prompt them to rethink, well, are those the right things? And why have I actually pushed those to the top of the backlog over something else? Because these things could actually move a metric, which should be really what matters for my product or my pathway. Then, of course, when it comes to delivery, stuff we're working on right now, what are we, when is stuff going to get done? What are we going to ship in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 or quarter to our users and our patients and our stakeholders? So when it comes to delivery, we use a feature Monte Carlo because most teams work on multiple features in parallel. So that's better than a traditional Monte Carlo. And it dynamically updates based on parameters we choose around confidence levels, how many things we work on in parallel, what the time horizon is, and if we want to scale or descale our throughput. So I can ask the agent, well, what will the private team deliver in the next quarter? So it's going to go off, it's going to look at that data source, it's going to put the time horizon of the next 12 weeks, and it's going to return the 2 epics that look like getting done to a 70, 85, and 95% confidence level. And again, it's going to ask us if we want to do anything further. Here it can ask us, well, do you want me to see what it looks like if we change our delivery pace and we go faster or we go slower? Or if we change the amount of work in progress we have, or working on more or less things in parallel, or even a mix of both. And hopefully your product owners have some familiarity around things like flow. And given we're at a flow-based conference, hopefully people are familiar with the importance of work in progress. So your PM might think, oh, well, I remember someone told me to limit work in progress, so let's go down that avenue. So I'm going to ask the agent, can I change work in progress? And it's going to say, well, what would you like the width to be? And give me some context as to what the width currently is. So it's currently 8, which is quite scary. And we're going to change it to 2. And it's going to rerun the forecast. And it's going to tell us, well, the stuff that I forecast before, if there's no change in this example, there isn't. But also you can see some of the new things that are now getting done in that time horizon based on us changing the width limit. So we can see now we've gone from 2 epics getting done to 5 epics getting done, and those finishing anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks sooner than if we were working on 8 things in parallel. So that whole thing of stop starting and start finishing, we can really bring it to life here and tell that story to the organization and make that information really quickly accessible to people without needing to go and get a delivery status update created in PowerPoint. When it comes to roles in delivery, delivery managers ask, well, what are our latest flow metrics for our teams? And this information is available in a Power BI dashboard to them. But let's say they didn't want to spend the time going off and finding that link. They can ask the agent, well, what are the latest flow metrics for my team? And the agent's going to, first of all, ask some clarification if this is at the epic level, the story level, or both. In this particular example, I'm going to say both. And what it's going to do is it's going to return over the last 8 weeks for the engineering team what their throughput, cycle time, with total work item ages, and how that's trending compared to the previous 8 weeks. And it's going to do it here at the epic and the story level. So an engineer, a delivery manager can start the week getting some of the latest information as to how their team may be doing. And they might be thinking then as to, well, I wonder where our bottlenecks are because, ultimately we want to improve flow. So naturally we should be chasing after our bottlenecks. And we can ask the agent, well, where are our biggest bottlenecks? And what it will do is it will go through the Jira API and it will find all the time and status for items completed in that week. And we'll tell you which is the biggest bottleneck in terms of average time. In this example, it's the in progress or in development status where work items spend an average of 11 days in there. It's going to tell us the top 3 items that spent the longest in this status and give you a reference to the item. So if you want to do that as a focus discussion point in a retro, that's fantastic. And it's also going to give you some ideas to address it in terms of what you might want to try in improving your way of working as a team. And you might think, well, also, our PR process doesn't seem great in this particular organization. We're using 3 approvers before PRs would progress. So we tapped into PR data around PR lead time, PR throughput, time to reviews and approvals and individual summaries. And we can ask the agent, well, what can you tell me about our PR data? Again, it will go off, it will look at that information and it will present it in a consolidated summary in terms of if things are increasing or decreasing, and what we should be thinking about. Are people contributing more or reviewing less? Are people reviewing more and contributing less? And again, it just gives some objective information as to how our PR process may be working. We can use that information or not. Or we might say, well, do you know what, actually, we just want to value stream map our process to better understand how work is flowing. So here on the right-hand side, I'm going to ask, well, can you create a value stream map for my team? What it's going to do is it's going to pull all the statuses that the team uses and ask you to identify, well, what are the weight states for the team? And I'm just going to go through, I'm going to click and I'm going to identify them, click confirm. The agent then will ask me again to confirm that those are the right ones. Maybe I've made a mistake and I want to change it. And let's say I'm going to say, yes, these are all fine. These are the statuses that are our weight states. And I'm going to say yes. And then what it's going to do is it's going to create a value stream map within Miro and provide a link to that. And this borrows from some of Steve's work. Anyone who's here, you chose my talk over Steve's, so I'm very flattered. And it can tell you in terms of the different statuses in the workflow for the team, how many days on average items are spending in that status, what's our wait times, what's our cycle time, what's our lead time in terms of from the very beginning of our process to the very end. Delivery manager might ask, well, how is my team doing? And what the agent will do is it can give a consolidated summary around not just flow metrics, but also things like blockers. How often work's getting blocked? Where is it getting blocked? What's the most frequently occurring blocker? What's the most impactful? Some delivery forecasts in terms of percentage confidence around dates, and some observations and suggestions as to things you might want to be thinking about for your team. So it very quickly gives them that coaching guidance that maybe they don't always have to hand. And ultimately, they're wondering, well, am I doing a good job? And this is again where the agent can help. It can analyze the transcript of a stand-up, and it can give you a rating out of 10 as to how that stand-up went in terms of what's working, what could be improved, coaching opportunities for next time. It can also do the same thing with retros. You could give it a copy of a Miro board that was used for a retro, and it gives you a rating out of 10 as to how your retro was run based on the information that's shown. And it's not just limited to delivery managers as well. POs could give it maybe the vision for their product, and they could get feedback as to a rating out of 10. Consistently using the rating out of 10 to introduce a bit of gamification here. So people might get a little bit competitive as to, if their vision rating score is higher than another person's. Also, it can do things like analyzing their discovery techniques. So if they do an opportunity solution tree, how effective is that? If they conduct a user interview, not only can it analyze the transcript of the interview and summarize it for you in terms of pain points and needs that the user has and friction points, but also give feedback as to your specific interview style. What worked well, what could be improved for next time, what you should encourage. Maybe it's the emotional context for the user, and again, give you a score out of 10. What about adoption and impact? Because I feel like a lot of stuff we read AI related doesn't cover that. So it's been in pilot for about 3 months now since launching in mid-March. Close to 270 conversation sessions with users, 82% user engagement. Over 80% of the queries are being answered using organizational knowledge sources. So that's quite good in terms of it's pointing to the right things. And really, we're looking at here around the time saved. We're not looking to replace people, but if we can quantify the time saved and attribute a financial element to that, we can start to build a case for investing in these agents. So roughly 190 hours saved, which if you assume an average 60K salary, that's about 5.8K savings for people or for the organization. But the qualitative impact matters well. This is one of the quotes that a delivery manager gave me. And I think that's quite a nice summary as to how it's made them more effective in their role. It just makes life so much easier for them. So if you want to do something similar, what would I suggest? Well, create a good knowledge layer. Jira, Confluence are a good starting point. Good books, books that align with your way of thinking in the organization. Maybe not just generic theory like a framework. Focus on stuff that is tailored for the organization. One of the things that Copilot Studio can do is you can tailor the use of public web sources or not, because there's a lot of stuff out there that might not align with your way of thinking. So you can disable the ability to access public web sources and provide those to users. Make sure that you don't set targets or hallucinate metrics. Make sure anything that you're using from a data perspective can be validated and quantified. And just treat it like a product. Think about users, use cases, feedback loops, etc. And remember that you're not scaling AI. I like to think that you're scaling better decision making. And with that, we can hopefully have time for questions. I will just hop back to the screen and see if there's anything in the Q&A. From Helder, is that Copilot chat agents or another license? It is another license. It's a Copilot premium license that you need. So for you and any users that you want to use the agent, they have to have a Copilot premium license in order to get the interaction with the agent and use it. And I think that's all the questions there are. Of course, if stuff comes up after this, or you want to reach out on LinkedIn and connect that way, feel free to send me a message, send me a connection request if we're not already connected. I will upload the slides onto the Flowtopia platform straight after this in PDF, so you've got those. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. And thank you for tuning in. Cheers.